Good morning. The level of corrosion protection in this model is quite similar to that of its predecessor, which means it could be better. For example, the boot lid of the estate version can corrode. The issue of lighting resistance to moisture has not yet been addressed. Xenon lights evaporate, the diodes at the back do not work, although this is not as severe as in the Passat B6. Daytime running LEDs may not work. The interior after the facelift has not changed significantly in terms of quality. However, the electronics work more stably, perhaps with the exception of the factory navigation, which freezes. The screen may stop working. The air conditioning sometimes causes problems. Significant problems are rare, unless the car is simply not looked after. It is worth paying attention to the suspension geometry and the issue of wear of stabilizer links, control arm pins, or tie rod ends. The Volkswagen Passat B7 was offered with the following spark ignition engines: 1.4 TSI Blue Motion, 122 HP. 1.4 TSI Twin Charger EcoFuel, 150 HP. 1.4 TSI Twin Charger Blue Motion, 160 HP. 1.8 TSI, 160 HP. 2.0 TSI, 211 HP. 3.6 V6 FSI, in practice VR6, 300 HP. The most striking thing about the engine range is the lack of the 1.6 MPI unit, which was present in the B6 Passat. Therefore, those looking for a really reliable, durable, trouble-free, and cheap-to-repair engine have nothing to look for here. Yes, the 1.4 TSI models with 122 HP and the 3.6 VR6 are relatively recommendable options, but they have their problems, including with the durability of the timing drive, both, carbon deposits, both, head gasket damage, both again, but also with ignition coils, VR6, turbocharger or exhaust gas treatment system, 1.4 TSI. The natural gas-powered EcoFuel variant with the twin-charger engine with a turbine and a mechanical compressor is a terrible choice, as is the unmodified 1.8 TSI unit, the same as in the B6 and having the same problems with oil consumption, timing drive, and ignition coils. Apparently, since November 2011, the problem in the CDAA 1.8 TSI engines has been eliminated, and such cars can be considered older, only repaired or cheap enough to be worth repairing yourself. Twin Charger is, however, such a thermally loaded engine that in older series it had problems with piston cracking, and the mechanical compressor clutch is also faulty. If someone wanted to get a car with such a device at all costs, they should look for a petrol engine with the CTHD code. It is heavily modified. It has different pistons, among other things. It is worth adding here that Twin Charger replaced the 1.8 TSI in the range in 2012. 2.0 TSI is a modernized engine compared to the one used in the Passat B6. In the B7 it has the designation CCZB, previously CAWB, but still belongs to the second generation of EA 888 engines, which theoretically tells you to be careful. On the other hand, you can find information on the web that all CCZB engines, unlike the aforementioned CDAA, had wider piston rings and therefore should not consume much oil, and most users seem to confirm this. Nevertheless, if this information is not enough for someone, then for peace of mind you can consider cars from May 2011 or newer. They have changed pistons. The following diesel engines were offered for the Passat B7. 1.6 TDI, 105 HP. 2.0 TDI, 140-177 HP. This car does away with unit injectors. Every diesel engine has common rail fuel supply. The 1.6 diesel is not very dynamic, but it can be recommended. On the disadvantages side, it is worth noting the so-so durability of the injection system, which may be related to the high sensitivity to fuel quality, DMF, EGR, and particulate filter. The turbocharger could also last a bit longer. In addition, oil and coolant leaks. It sounds bad, but in practice, it is a very decent and quite reliable source of power. The timing belt, together with the water pump, should be replaced no less than 150,000 kilometers. Some recommend 120,000 kilometers. The aforementioned pump may not last longer. In the 2.0 TDI, attention should be paid mainly to the timing drive and dual-mass flywheel. Note, the 140 horsepower variant also appeared as Blue TDI with an exhaust after-treatment system capable of selective catalytic reduction (SCR). You can read more about it here. Any operational inconveniences Blue TDI compensates for by meeting the Euro 6 exhaust emission standard, which may be quite significant in light of the attempts to throw older diesels out of cities. The VW Passat B7 with other 2.0 TDI engines and with the 1.6 TDI meets the Euro 5 standard. Of course, the discussion about Euro standards is purely theoretical here, because both the 1.6 and 2.0 TDI are engines affected by the Dieselgate scandal. There is an option to upload improved software, but this usually results in a drop in performance, increased fuel consumption, and more frequent equipment failures. The following gearboxes were available for the VW Passat B7. 6-speed manual, standard on all versions except 3.6 FSI V6. 7-speed double-clutch gearbox DSG, option on 1.4 and 1.8 TSI engines. 6-speed double-clutch gearbox DSG, standard on the 3.6 FSI V6, optional on the 2.0 TSI and all 2.0 TDI versions. The manual gearbox should not cause any problems. Alternatively, you can pay attention to the condition of the synchronizers of the first two gears. In the case of DSG, regular oil changes are key, every 40 max, 50,000 kilometers. The 6-speed version is better rated in terms of durability and strength due to its design with wet clutches. The 7-speed gearbox has dry clutches. Controller failures do occur. The drive system should not cause any problems, regardless of whether it is front-wheel drive or all-wheel drive, but in the latter case, it would be a good idea to change the oil in the Haldex regularly. If the Passat has both 4Motion and DSG, it is best to simply change the oil in both of these elements at once. In the all-wheel drive system, the differential sometimes fails, but it is not a plague. The answer depends to some extent on whether we are interested in petrol or diesel cars and when they were manufactured. It is difficult to talk about any improvements with diesels, apart from perhaps the oil pump in the 2.0 TDI. In the case of petrols, during the production of the Passat B7, the 1.4 TSI twin-charger, 1.8 TSI, and 2.0 TSI units were modified, especially in the first two cases. Early models should be avoided like the plague. The 2.0 TSI, even before the changes, should be a better choice. In the base 1.4 TSI and the top 3.6 FSI, basically nothing was touched, so if they had their typical problems, they still do, but you can live with both. To put it bluntly, although the Volkswagen Passat B7 is a tad more refined than the B6, it does not differ from its predecessor enough to justify calling it a new generation, especially since the quality improvements appeared only after some time, and not immediately upon the model's introduction to the market. You can find sensibly configured cars that won't take the last penny out of your pocket, but maybe it's worth taking a look at the competition? And if you know of any common errors, your comments are welcome.
Camipro Website ist Katalog aller Automarken, Motoren, Getriebe, was bricht und bei welchem Kilometerstand. Welche Pakete können Ihre Tasche hart belasten? Dieses und vieles mehr über Autos erfahren Sie auf Camipro.